visible, tracking and visualizing political advertising on meta platforms with polydashboard.org by Philip Mai. Philip is a senior researcher and co-director at the Social Media Lab, Ted Rogers School of Management at TMU. His work focuses on social media misuse, covering disinformation, deepfakes, foreign interference, conspiracy theories, online toxicity, and digital political transparency. I'll let him take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Philip Mai. Thank you for having me. This group is new to me. So before I'm going to get into my presentation about Poly Dashboard, I'd like to introduce our lab. I'm here with my co-director, Anatoliy Gruzd. He'll be joining the presentation for the last few slides. But again, I want to quickly introduce our lab, what we do here before I get to Poly Dashboard. I think the clicker is not working. Okay, so the lab was started about 10 years ago. We started the lab at Dalhousie University, actually. We study how social media and other technology is changing the way people connect, how they do business, how they find each other online. So over the years, when we first started the lab, we started looking at things like, how social media is being used in academia. And then, as you can see, over the years, after 10 years, we've added other areas that we focus on. We basically grew up with social media in some ways. We started, we were at Dalhousie, so there was a lot of medical doctors there, and they wanted to know maybe you can use social media to help with smoking cessation. So that was some of the early thinking back then when we were still hopeful about social media. But as we learned more about social media, we got into other things like analytics, because again, some of our early studies, a lot of people came to us and asked basically, hey, how do you guys get the data? Because they have their own question that they want to ask. But the problem for us was that we didn't have the resources to provide that kind of help. So many of the software that we created was for ourselves to use, but then it created a lot of problems because people would constantly email and contact us saying, hey, it didn't work for me. So we then had to basically rejig the code and put everything online. So all the software we make is now available online. So this way, there's one copy of it. It's on our server. Every time there's a problem, we can fix it. And so it helps with that a little bit. And then over the years, we got into other areas like I said, as we grew with social media, we got into misinformation. We got into politics because I remember when we first started the lab, when they invite us on the news, we would be in the last 3 minutes of the presentation, where it's the happy, fluffy puppy stories at the end of the newscast. Now, when we're being asked to go on the news, it's usually in the first 5 minutes of the newscast, because you can see how social media have woven this well into our society. We get all of our funding. We made a decision a long time ago never to accept any funding from any of the social media company that we study. So we work very hard to find alternative resources to support our student and our work. So basically, if you have a grant out there and you're not one of the social media company, we have a project. So what we do at the lab is that along with the research, we publish a lot of public reports. So over the years, we look at things like, where people are spending time on social media. We look at its effects on misinformation, and on influencers and so on. You can download all these reports for free from our website. Actually, today, we just released a brand new report. We survey 1,500 Canadians to find out, are they using AI? What are they using it for? So it's chock full of information. And if you go to our website right now, you can download that today. And surprisingly, 66% of Canadians have reported that they have tried out different AI tools. But our data also show that mostly the use is casual. What we wanted to do with this survey was basically just to capture a snapshot in time right now, so that in a few years, we can do the same survey again to see if AI is making any inroads, or is it going to stay static? So that was why we did this survey. And as an academic research lab, of course, we also do regular stuff that academic research labs do, journal articles, book chapters, and so on. One of the recent study that we did was on exposure to the beliefs in pro-Kremlin disinformation among Canadians. We want to know, for example, among Canadians who believe in some of the talking points and narratives about the Russia-Ukraine war. So that's another study we released recently. And then we also run a lot of experiments. So for example, a couple of years ago, X and some of the other platforms would be running footnotes at the bottom of things to check. And we were curious, we're like, does it work? When people see a footnote on a Facebook post or on an X note, do people click on it less or more? Or is it neutral? But most of the studies are done internally and they don't release that to the public. They go to Congress, they go to Parliament and say, but see, we have a solution. We have these footnotes. And we're like, but does it work? Does it stop people from sharing? So we, rounded up 1,500 people, and then we basically created a fake simulated Facebook timeline, and then we randomly add footnotes and blur screens to their timeline, and we basically watch their mouse click, right, to see whether do they share it more. So, and you know what? They do work. But sadly, Facebook have decided they're going to step back from some of the fact checking recently because of the change in the election in the US. But we know now that what this and other studies like ours show that it does work. Our work's been featured in various media across North America and Europe. So it's one of the ways that at the lab we know that we have impact because the work that we've done have been cited by others to support their own work. And recently, 2 weeks ago, we just released a new app called Note Trackers for community notes. You know how on X, there's a community notes program where members of X can join the program and then rate different notes about a topic, right? But the problem is only about 10% of notes that are proposed actually ever see daylight. And now we have data to show that. So for example, we were able to get all 1.4 million proposed community notes in the system. And then we're able to marry it up to the actual post. And you can see from the data that only 10% ever see daylight, which means that 90% of the proposed note will remain forever in limbo. But again, they go to Parliament, they go to Congress and says, hey, we solved the misinformation problem. We have an army of people who will rate these notes. And if enough people rate them as being helpful, we will show it on our website, on our platform. But we have the data to show that actually, no, only about 10% ever see daylight. But we just released that last week. We also create and build a lot of other apps. For example, a lot of researchers come to us to ask for help with getting data for their own study. So we built a whole platform called Communalytic that basically help people get data from Reddit, Blue Sky, from let's see what else, yeah, Mastodon and Telegram and so on. You can check that out. And then we created something called a deepfake tracker, which is basically it tracks all the fact checks by professional fact checkers that involve anything related to deepfakes. So if they find a video online and somebody fact check it, instead of going to AFP or going to Reuters to find these things, you can go to our website. Every morning, we go and visit all of those websites and bring them all to one place. So now you can find anything related to deepfakes that's been debunked. It'll be in one place. Same thing with conflict misinfo. It does something similar, but it focuses on the Russia-Ukraine war. So if any fact checkers, there's about 250 of them around the world. If they release any fact check recently that involves the Russia-Ukraine war, it will show up on this website. So again, you don't have to visit all those different fact checkers to get that information. And then we translate that into English for you. So this way you get it in all one place. And then for today's presentation, I'm going to get into Poly Dashboard. So this is something that we developed a few years ago, and we've been updating it every 2 years or so as we basically learn more about the data and learn more about the API that's available. So we can constantly update it. We actually just updated this 2 weeks ago, just in time for the election. The idea behind this is that it helps to track paid targeted ads about politics, elections, and social issues. And it's designed to help voters, journalists, campaign staffers, and even diplomatic staff So for example, if you're a diplomatic staff located, let's say, in India, and you want to know what the local parties are telling their own people, you don't have to watch local news. You can go to this dashboard and see what they are trying to sell online and who they're targeting. So that's one use of the dashboard. And again, the idea is that its aim is to make paid online political advertising more transparent and more resistant. But many of you are wondering, like, but if it's paid advertising, doesn't Meta know what the ads are? What is the concern? So, but before I get into that, the dashboard itself is made up of 34 dashboards, each one focusing on a different country. So when you go to Poly Dashboard, think of it as the front door. Once you go into the front door, you can choose what country to look at. Currently, there are about over 35, 36 countries now. We keep on adding more as soon as we have time and resources. All the EU countries been added, and we're planning to add another 30 or something countries in the future. So here's some examples of how people have used paid ads online. For example, we used this a year ago to discover this scammer who was running, 15,000 ads on Meta to try to trick people into clicking on one of their ads, so that, because they were harvesting people's information. They were telling people basically, hey, remember the $2,000 check that the president sent to you during COVID? There's a new program. Give us your details and we will sign you up for this new program and send you the check. What they were really doing was trying to convince the public to raise their hand and says, hi, I need money. I need money now. Here's my name, here's my contact. What they then do is they sell that list to loan sharks. They sell that list to people who charge high interest loans. And then they can contact those people and says, hi, I heard you need money. So that's how they were trying to scam people. But we discovered that because one day I was bored in January and I was looking at the thing. I'm like, what is this advertiser? USA Daily Benefit. And they were using videos of the president, President Biden, and then using an AI voiceover. It sounded just like President Biden. And he was announcing and talking about this new program that you have to sign up for and you don't want to miss out. Okay, so it can use to discover scams. The other thing is that it can use to discover ads that basically touches the line but don't necessarily go over. So this way the AI system at Meta won't be able to catch it. So for example, during the federal election in the US last year, somebody called Hard Asset Heroes, they were running ads on Meta, and the ads simply say, I think the election's been postponed next week. That's all it said. So nothing in those words would trigger any warning at Meta, right? So, but when we look at the who they were targeting, it turns out they were targeting older women and men over 65. So maybe they're just trying to convince a small subgroup of people just to stay home and not go vote. And what more interesting is that you can see they were targeting the 3 states in the US with the most number of people over 65, Florida, Texas, and California, right? So they're not trying to convince everybody to stay home. They're just trying to convince a small fraction of people to stay home, and that could change some local races, right? So there's an example of how you can use paid ads to try to sway the public. A couple years ago, there was one of the far-right party in Germany, for example. They were using Facebook ads to run an ad that simply says, real German eat pork. Okay, so none of those words would have triggered anything at Facebook to be flagged, right? But of course, they are against Islam and people who follow and Muslims. So they basically was trying to target specific groups within Germany. So Poly Dashboard help you with surface these kind of ads, what I call dog whistle ads. So recently we added the ability to filter out. So when you come to Poly Dashboard, you select the country that you want, you select the date range, the platform that you want to see the ads from, the demographics and location. And then once you select that, it gives you a list of all advertisers that meet those criteria, right? And then once you have that list, you can then just go through and check, who are these advertisers? Oh, that's an insurance company. Oh, that's a political party. But what this does is it surfaces those dark money groups with names like, Make America Great Again and Again and Again. It's a new group. You never heard of it, right? So you can click on it and see what they're advertising. So the idea is that this thing will help to filter out advertisers that you might not have heard of that are targeting specific group of people. And then our hope is to basically add more canaries to the coal mine, because there's just not enough people. The AI won't find these things. But if this stuff is open and exposed, more people can flag them. There's a couple of tabs. So you can get a list based upon the most active advertisers running ads based on demographics. Like, who are they targeting? Give me a list of all advertisers who are advertising right now in Canada, targeting women over 65. You can now just get a list of those advertisers, right? So if you have a hunch that, I think that particular group is going to be targeted. So now you can just go and say, give me a list of all of those, okay? Or by location. Hi, give me a list of all advertisers in Canada right now, currently running ads, targeting people living in Alberta. I don't care about what's happening in Nova Scotia. I don't care about what's happening in any other province. I just want Alberta. Now you get a list of that. So now once you have that list, you can then go in and just check out who are they, who they're advertising to. So once you click on one of the advertisers that we present to you, a bunch of other modules come up that tells you a little bit more information about that advertiser. Like, for example, how many Facebook pages do they own? So on Meta, well, on Facebook, in order to run ads, you have to have a Facebook page. But for a lot of scammy advertisers and bad actors, what they do is they create multiple Facebook pages, right? And they'll run ads from all those pages. So this way, when you click on it and you go to a page, you're like, oh, it's, Hard Asset Management Group, whatever that is. Like, you don't know, but it's actually paid for by one particular funder. But we now make that visible, right? Because otherwise you won't know how many groups, how many of the Facebook pages this funder is funding. So we bring that out into the open. And then we give you information like how many ads are being run each day. Again, we tell you, for example, where most of the eyeballs for that advertiser come from for the selected time period. So for example, for this one, it's Quebec and Ontario. And then the other thing is we give you a box plot for each of the ads. So we have data on the individual ad that these advertisers are running, right? So we can break it down and show you, are they targeting women more, or are they targeting men more? At what age? What age range? And then the other thing is, if you see an ad that's interesting to you, you can click on any of the dots on there, and it will take you to that actual ad so you can see for yourself what that ad is about, who it's reaching. Meta provides some of this information, but the problem is when you go to Meta Ad Library, it gives you everything you want to know about that one ad, right? Which is terrific if you want to know everything about that one ad, but I don't care about that one ad. Some advertisers are running, 5,000, 15,000 ads. I want the aggregate. I want to know what that actor is doing on Meta's platform. So what we did was we said, okay, since you're giving us information about each of the ads, we're going to sit there and we're just going to add them up about that advertiser. So we basically aggregate all that information up for you. And then the other thing is we look at the words that they're using in their ads, because this way you don't have to read all their ads. You can get a quick summary of what they are trying to sell to the people on Meta. And then we also give you a list of the most frequently used advertising copy. So because basically they do a lot of A/B testing with all these advertising copy, right? So the one that works is the one that they use again and again, right? So by seeing this in a complete list like this, you can see what have worked for them, right? And you can see the one that hasn't worked because they didn't use them as often, right? And then if you click on the sample ad, you can now go directly to Facebook and see that particular ad. So everything we do, we start out basically at the higher end of the funnel, and we just let you go down till you can we show you the data point. So don't take our word for it. These are the data point that makes up that bigger picture. So at any point, you can do that. So next, I'm going to invite my colleague up to go over the last 3 slides, and then I'm going to rejoin you guys for the Q&A. Okay, so that's a quick rundown. Thanks.
Thank you, Philip. Hi, everyone. I'm Anatoliy Gruzd. I'm Philip's colleague at the Social Media Lab, Toronto Metropolitan University. And I just want to briefly talk a little bit about the comparison between Polydashboard, the app that we developed, versus what Facebook Meta at Library offers. What essentially happened, we started developing Polydashboard 10 years ago. But then 5 years or so ago, so first the app was focusing on Twitter activities, political activities. But 5 years or so ago, Meta started releasing APIs that allows anybody, developers like yourselves, to collect and then develop this visual interpretations and summary of the data. So that's why, Philip described how we wanted to know what's happening in that environment. But over the years, because of developers like ourselves, we noticed that Meta started adding new features to their web interface that allows you to search for targeted ads, and which is great. And I think a community like this, like you as well, push industries in many cases to become more transparent, because by developing the useful tools for third parties, for researchers, policymakers, we're also saying, hey, Meta, whatever you're doing is not clear or not transparent enough. And in some cases, it requires policymakers like general GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation in the EU, forcing Meta essentially make some of this data available, and particularly data around targeting, like who each advertiser targets. But the problem is that we're not under the GDPR regulations here in Canada, and many countries don't benefit from that regulation. Essentially, when we collect data from the API, we don't know what exactly advertiser chose as their targeting criteria. Are they really targeting men, women, or other criteria? So that data is not available. And so by collecting data from API, what is available, we're able to aggregate it and kind of derive some of that analytics to put a spotlight on that data set. So essentially, it's kind of mixed bag. It's a good Meta push to do some of it and add new features to their web interface, but I think more work needs to be done. And so this is a quick comparison. So if you go to Meta at Library, you can Google it, and there's a nice web interface where you can search by keywords if you know an actor you want to examine, like Conservative Party of Canada, Liberal Party of Canada. Those are known actors. But something like daily assets management, whatever Philip mentioned, you would know to even search for it. But so if for known actors, though, there's some targeted information available even in Canada. So on the left side, your left side, we see some of the information about what's available in terms of targeting for the audience. So if we search for a party, let's say Liberal Party of Canada, we click on Audience tab. We kind of can see the percentage-wise if they did choose to direct some of their messages to particular gender, demographic groups. We can see that. But again, it's within a specific advertiser, Liberal Party of Canada. With Polydashboard, we can quickly kind of put it together to compare what this advertiser, like Liberal Party of Canada, does versus Conservative Party of Canada, to kind of revealing a little bit more analytics there. So the other thing is that a lot of advertisers sometimes don't choose a particular demographic groups to target. They'll say, oh, everybody will see that. So as a result, you don't really know who will see the ad, what's the reach, what's the impression data. And that's what the API data helps us to spotlight. So I'll have a couple examples here. There's a lot of text, so I'm not going to read it, but let's focus on this example. So this is a screenshot Philip and I took this morning for Liberal Party of Canada. And so on Meta at Library interface, there's a data from March 30th to April 5th. It's always delayed on Meta platform. With the API, we get data every day. So it's a bit live data. But so here, for comparison, we limit it for the same time period. So what you can see with the targeting audience for the Liberal Party of Canada, 99%, they said everybody will see the ads. So they did not target by gender explicitly. But yet, when we go to Polydashboard and look at the aggregate view of the same ads, that same 5,000, so there are like 5,000 dots. They become the smiling chart. essentially, showing you demographic groups. The blue, man, woman, and orange API says unknown. So that's how the data produces. But you can see both groups kind of skewed towards older demographic, but relatively there are more women being targeted or reached actually than what's specified in their targeted characteristics. Then we're like, so why is that happening? So there are a couple of things may be happening. So first of all, targeted ads is a marketplace. So you are saying, I want to buy eyeballs for this demographic group or for people interested in that particular category. And so you're competing with somebody else who might be also want to buy the same eyeballs. And so if somebody else paid more money, their ads will win. So essentially, by looking at just targeting, you don't really realize who will see that particular ad. But by looking at the impression and reach, you actually understand that for Liberal Party of Canada, the reach is really skewed towards older population, who are more likely to vote perhaps, but also skewed towards women. Same with gender. So with gender, if you look at the Meta Ads Library webpage for the audience targeting, they kind of have some ads targeting this group, that group. So you get essentially everybody for the chart on the Meta website, you get everybody like almost 100% targeted by age. Not helpful, really not helpful. But here, the same chart kind of represents both age and gender. What you do get is it maybe also useful from Meta. And that's why we think we should use two tools at the same time. You can get detailed targeting. If the advertiser used some specific interest that either you as a Facebook or Instagram user entered, or based on your clicks, the advertiser may say, like in this case, Liberal said, well, we want to target some ads and show to housewives. Meta knows about you more than about yourself, perhaps. So you don't need to say I'm a housewife or parenting a child. Maybe you like some pictures or posted some pictures of your kids, primary school, homemaker, mommy. So by selecting some of this interest and demographics, direct targeting, that's what happened with the impressions data, that it's skewed towards that women, older population, perhaps. But so I'll just wrap it up and we open up for the questions. Essentially, it's a work in progress. And that's why Philip and I are really excited to speak to this group. And I understand we have a little bit of time for breakout sessions. Maybe some you want to join us. There are lots of ideas we have, and maybe you have, how we can expand this toolkit, how the Polo dashboard. We did open source it. Right now it's on version number 2. If you want to contribute, we would love that. It's on GitHub. In 2 weeks, by the end of this month, we're going to release version 3, and that is include some of the features you see on the website. It's currently live. So you want to contribute, I guess I want to say wait until end of this month, but you don't have to wait to reach out, and because we have a long shopping list of things we want to do. Yeah, and Philip, maybe you can close.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we have a roadmap that we're hoping to implement once we have more time and more people on board. There are many other data points that the API provide that we have not got time to use and figure out how to display that kind of data yet, right? But we have some ideas already. So the next thing that we're planning to roll out sometime in May is going to be semantic search. So now you can go and say, hi, give me a list of all advertisers who are advertising on things related to a particular topic. So this way, now instead of getting a list based on money or who they're targeting, you get a list based upon the words and the semantics of their ads itself, right? So now you can say, oh, I didn't see that like these two advertisers, they're in different fields, but they're kind of like talking about, they're probably going to be allies. Now you can get that list, right? By using semantic search. So that's one of the things that we're going to be releasing. And the other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to clean up the code a little bit. So this way, hopefully by the end of this month, when you guys are getting into it, it'll be a lot cleaner. And we're moving some of these things to a faster server and a new database. So that way it'll be a lot faster. Because we have users for this thing from around the world right now, because there's a lot of people interested in figuring out, what advertisers are doing in their own country. So for example, Australia is having an election coming up. our colleagues there are all over this app trying to figure out, and they've been able to find a lot of astroturfing groups that are, online trying to pretend to be somebody else, trying to push an agenda. And they were able to use our app to then discover that and basically out those groups. So anyway, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely, lovely speak from both of you. We're just going to navigate over to the Q&A. And before we start, is it all right if we record the Q&A as well?
Yeah, that's fine.
Lovely. So the way we'll be doing this is I think we'll do 3 in person, and then we'll also see about online. So 3 in person, then 3 online, if that's okay. The online folks? Yes? Lovely. Okay. Any questions, friends? Any questions? We have one couple over here. We'll start it.
Thanks for the talk. It's very informative. I do wonder, usually on the news, it's about people talk about some hidden advertisers that doesn't seem to have political alignments, but they will make ads that are surprisingly very reachable to many people. Is this too gonna help us catch those hidden influences?
It can. That's one of the reasons why Meta also includes social issues. So for example, you might not be a political party, but you might be running ads on social issues, let's say abortion, or the environment, climate change, right? So it's not directly related to an election or a politician, but it's advocating for a particular policy. So for example, so the idea with this is that we help you filter out the advertiser online so that you can say, okay, who are these people? What is this advertiser? But it's not going to be able to pinpoint because it always will require some human interaction. Our job is basically doing the first pass, the first filter, right? And to reduce because we have a lot of journalists that are using this, and for them, when they go to the dashboard, they have to know the name of the actor first. Like Anatoliy mentioned earlier, you have to know the name of the actor first to then go looking at what they're up to. Our app help you to find and surface advertisers that are unknown to you, right? Who might be targeting a particular problem, targeting a particular demographic groups. So basically, that's the value that we bring, is that we basically help you filter that, finding the needle in the stack of needles.
Oh, thank you. That was so informative, and I learned a lot. You've been doing this for 10 years, you said? Oh, that's fantastic. I'm curious. Actually, I happen to be reading the book Revenge of the Tipping Point. Have you noticed, or do you have any insights or anything that stands out as any trends or tipping points or anything like that? Any stories that really stand out?
Well, some of the example I gave you earlier of how, like I said, a lot of people think that paid ads are benign simply because, you have their credit card, you know who they are. But again, we've seen again and again with every election, people found clever ways of basically walking up to the line, leaning way over the line, and as soon as you say something, you point out that they're acting in a bad way, they lean back. So what this app does is that it helps us identify those people who are literally skirting the line without crossing the line.
I'm just gonna run all the way over here, across the room.
I'm curious to know about the next steps you have in play for the semantic search and potentially sentiment analysis or clustering ad units based around what kind of topics they're focused on. Because it seems to be very empowering for kind of getting the adjacencies of different players that are in the same space, but it also seems to be a very technically challenging problem.
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can quickly take, can you use the mic?
Mhm.
Yeah. And so this is just one of the features. So the question was about the future feature that Philip mentioned in semantic search. What we're trying to do, we're trying to add value to what's already out there, and what's out there, it's this meta product, the ad library interface. So they only allow you to search by keywords, but quite often, as Philip showed some examples, the language can be misinterpreted, or maybe used creatively to have certain messages built in. And so semantic search, essentially, with the recent advance in large language models, it's much easier for us to run all the captions that attach to each ad and organize it in a way to group them semantically that are semantically similar. So I don't know at what level do you want to discuss that, but maybe later during the breakout groups. So the semantic search for text, it's probably a very straightforward feature. The field that at the end of the ad, so the ad can have a picture, it can have a video, but at the end of the day, there's always a message at the end. And but with semantic search, you can say, I'm looking for pictures of or messages related to dogs, many of you dog lovers. But it will also it will only bring up ads with exact spelling of dogs, maybe plural dogs, dogs, but it may not bring up related terms or other pets. And so semantic search allows that. The other idea we had extended semantic search to images, the media objects. So that's a little bit time consuming and requires more data to those of you who've done it to process, essentially allow don't just do OCR, recognize text and image, but I actually categorize images based on what's in it, because image says thousands words, as they say, can speak thousands words. And so semantic search, again, with some of these large models out there, allows us to do to search systematically images and text together. Have you done some work? Is that what you're asking? Why are you asking? A little bit, okay.
Before we take it to another in-person question, I thought we could just check in online if anyone online has a question. Walking past.
Yeah, hello everyone. I tried my best to find someone, but it looks like that we don't have any questions from the online audience at the moment. Yeah, feel free if you have the question, please. Yeah.
No worries.
Someone-
We can go back to in person, but if anyone online, just drop it in the chat and we could come back to you. Take this over to
Yeah.
another in person. Yes. Oh, a couple. Did you solve your question?
I have a question. Thanks for the presentation. I'm really interested in the context that you're working in. So like you've got this open source project, it's an application that you develop and you maintain, and it's available for free online. And I'm used to like open source projects that are run on a volunteer basis. I'm used to commercial projects that are run on a private sector basis for that have revenue somehow. I'm curious about the sort of business model or sustainability model for an application like this in an academic context.
We do it simply because we know there's a need for it, and we have the expertise in-house. We understand data, we know how to visualize these data, and we realize that there's no way to fund it, like you said, via a commercial way. So we looked into that, and then we decided, like, if anybody in Canada is going to do this, it's probably going to be us. So this is something that we took on, like I said, a few years ago, and we literally, every few years, we go back and says, okay, what new things can we add to this right now? So every 2 years or so, we just revisit, and then we, check with our colleagues what they're doing with the data in other countries, and then we build on each other's work. But yeah, it's just something that we decided, like, this is something that needed to be done. And we are a big believer in democracy. And the first step to defending democracy is making sure that things are transparent, because with transparency comes accountability. Okay? Because without transparency, there is no accountability, because it becomes a game of he said, she said. Now we actually have the data that says, no, that's exactly what you're doing.